Wouldn't it be awesome if you could follow along and see the investments and trades of the billionaire investors of this world? Well, guess what? Actually, you can. And best of all, it's free of charge. And today I'm going to show you how. For that, all you have to do is go to the website called Dataroma.com. And over here, it's a very simplistic website, but it really gives some deep insights into the stock trades and investments of some of the richest portfolio managers and investors in the world. The reason for that, in the US, if you have a portfolio over a certain size, you need to publicly declare your holdings and trades. And this website basically collects the information and displays it publicly. So that's really good for investors like you and I. And from here, you really have a bunch of information. Obviously, we can start with looking at the Superinvestors portfolio statistics. Superinvestors basically are billionaires or really huge portfolio money managers. And yeah, we can see over here, no surprise, the 10 most owned stocks by those people are actually some of the biggest companies in the world that are also reflected in the S&P 500, the Googles, Microsofts of this world, Meta still there, Visa, Amazon. So really no big surprise over here. United Health for me is actually something new I didn't come across before. You can then from here also click into it if you want to see more information. But for overall stock research, is not exactly my favorite website. It's very rudimentary. So for that, I would quickly hop over to Seeking Alpha, put the initial over there, UNH, and then it will come up over here and it'll give me a bit better insights into the stock. Then over here, the biggest 10 stocks by percentage of the total holdings. Again, very similar picture over there, with the only exception of Micron being here. So that seems to be quite a hot stock with a lot of the big portfolio managers. Then you can see over here, top big bets. That basically means it's owned by at least 2 super investors. So you can see over here, like Stellantis, Ferguson, and Green Brick Partners. Maximum somebody has in their portfolio is almost 30% of the super investor holding that. And I never heard about the company before. That could be quite interesting to investigate further and see what it is exactly. But I just want to show you the rest of the platform so you get an idea of what I can do. You can see over here the top 10 buys of the last quarter. And more precisely, you can see over here that's based out of the 76 from 77 investors filing so far. So it means one hasn't filed yet, but basically all the others together, the top 10 buys in the last quarter, once again, fairly similar as the top holdings, but a couple noteworthy ones, Salesforce, Walt Disney, and Warner Brothers. So it shows you these stocks are very much in demand by the super investors. So if they are buying those, that's good for us to know and further investigate if it's worth to buy it. On the other side, you can see the top 10 buys by percentage. Once again, companies I never heard of, such as Lithia Motors or Coherent Corp. Yeah, I would probably have to do some more research. So for me, that's really eye-opening. And I found so many more stocks that I wanted to investigate. Doesn't mean I automatically buy into it, but just seeing it here and seeing that big smart money, big investors buy it, for me, that really shows that there is obviously a certain potential. Otherwise, they wouldn't plow their money into it, right? And then we have a really interesting tables that shows all the holdings that are at least 5% of super investors portfolio or more that have reached a 52-week low. So basically that has a big position in a super investors portfolio. They haven't sold out of it. They're still holding on to it. And it reached a 1-year low basically. So that shows you the investor really believes in the stock, and right now it's the cheapest it's been for a year. That basically shows you stocks that super investors believe have a long-term potential and at the moment are available at a discount, so to say. So that's a really interesting table to look at and analyze the companies one by one. Pfizer being one of those companies, and when I see the last 5-year return, 20%, over 10 years, 52%. However, they do have a very healthy dividend yield of 4%. So that makes it very attractive for long-term dividend growth. A very little short interest and obviously a very healthy market cap. So, seeing a lot of the super investors having it in portfolio, more than 5%, gives me confidence that they value the company very highly. And at the moment, obviously, it's much cheaper than it used to be 2 years ago. We know why. So yeah, that could be very attractive if I wanted to invest more into it. And lastly, we have here the data of super investor stocks with the most insider buys in the last 3 months, meaning people working in the company buying more of their own share. And that's really reassuring that people in their own company buy more of their own stock. I mean, obviously, you would assume that this is a given because obviously they work in it. So they have a keen interest in the company doing better and the stock price going up. But at the same time, it really gives you confidence because they put the money where their mouth is. If they were to see some litigation coming up or some big things happening negatively about the company, obviously they would rather sell the share because they could see the stock price dipping. If they're buying right now, they believe in the short or long-term appreciation of the stock price. Otherwise, why would they use their own money to buy the stock, right? So one of them, for example, is Coinbase. In total, over the last 3 months, insiders bought 4 million worth of Coinbase stock. And if you click into it, you can see here exactly who bought what. We have a couple of directors, and one of them being Tobias Lütke, who also happens to be the CEO of Shopify. And in addition to this, has recently been appointed as board of of directors for Coinbase, and now being part of Coinbase, he buys with his own money shares in Coinbase. So that's really reassuring. Now, does it mean I'm going to buy Coinbase? Definitely not. But still, for me, it's really fascinating to see, what are people doing in their own companies with other companies. So that's really, really quite interesting. Right. From here, you can also click into real time. So here you really see the latest trades that have been happening chronologically. Obviously, it's not updated on a daily basis. So there is a little delay of around 7-8 days. But still, you can really get some good information from here and really see what's happening, who's selling in what company, etc. And you see the amounts, obviously some big values over there. And yeah, you really see here what's happening, who's selling what, etc. So you can go through and have a look. But in this video, we want to focus on a couple of super investors. So let's click into super investors over here. And then over here, I can see 77 of the biggest names and investors out there. So let's start with the legend himself, Mr. Warren Buffett, 92 years of age, still investing and witty as ever. Really love the guy. He really has a unique perspective on things, and I really appreciate him for being so straightforward. He doesn't have to worry about anything. He is nearing the end of his life, so he can say whatever he wants to, but I really appreciate his level-headed approach. Right, with this, let's look into his portfolio and see what he's doing. Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway. You're just going to click into here, and then you can see here what he's obviously doing with his fund, Berkshire Hathaway, and what he's trading. So here you can see all the holdings that he has, and for some of the super investors I've seen, that can be 3, 4. For some of them, it's up to 50, 60. So it really depends, and you can see obviously not all of them had a change. So if you want to see just the changes, you can click over here either into the sales, buys, or of course activity. And from here you can see all the sales and buys by quarter. So if we look into the last quarter of what he bought and sold, you can see here majority of it has actually been sales. So he actually dumped quite a bit of stock over here. Biggest one being Taiwan Semiconductors. Now obviously we see the situation with China and Taiwan happening, so he might be a little bit worried about what's coming. He might either know a bit more than we do about the situation, or just being a bit cautious and worried about what could happen, because if there was to be a conflict, then obviously TSM would really suffer big time and the stock would drop. So maybe that's why he pulled his funds out, but that's definitely very interesting. And if you invest into that, then maybe that can also serve as food for thought for you and do a similar thing with your holdings. Then a couple of other stocks like Bank of New York, Activision, Blizzard, but at the same time, very interesting what he did buy, 21.55% of Louisiana Pacific Corp. Once again, I actually never heard about it, so let's hop over to Seeking Alpha. Initial was LPX, so let's pop it into here and then see what they're up to. Over the last 5 years, grew by 111%. Over the last 10 years, 165%. It does have quite a high short interest of 5.58%. The yield, 1.66, not exactly wow. Apparently they provide building solutions primarily for use in new home construction, repair and remodeling and outdoor structure markets. So it seems he's bullish on constructions going forward, housing, etc. So maybe he knows more, probably he does, otherwise he wouldn't invest. He really is a value investor, so he does his homework. So again, very interesting and maybe a good stock for you to investigate further if you were to be interested in following Warren Buffett's portfolio. Next up, let's check out another multi-billionaire, Bill Gates. So that will be under the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Trust. But once again, if I go into activity, I can see here a couple of trades, not as many as Warren Buffett did with his Berkshire Hathaway, but he still did quite a bit. And very interestingly, his biggest sell was actually in Berkshire Hathaway. So maybe he has doubts about the longevity of Warren Buffett, I don't know, but he did sell quite a bit of it. Then he bought Hormel Foods, and that's really interesting. Because actually I never heard about Hormel Foods before, but then I did some research and it turns out it's a big food processor and packaging company, and they provide various perishable products including fresh meats, frozen items, refrigerated meal solutions, sausages, hams, bacons, while at the same time Bill Gates is a strong advocate of fake meat and plant-based foods. So really interesting that he actually actively invests into a meat-based company while at the same time he sees the future in something else. So really interesting, and once again for us to investigate further, but the fact that we can see that he says one thing and does another just means we sometimes have to dig below the news articles that we see, because ultimately it's what we do, not what we say we're gonna do. And that's why I really love that website, because actions don't lie. What they invest in is what they believe in. Next up, let's look at another famous investor, Michael Burry, who you might know from the movie Big Short. He actually made a huge bet against the housing market in 2008, 2009, shorted the market and really made a fortune from it. So let's see what he's buying these days. So these are the trades he's been doing, and for me what's very interesting to see actually that he buys into JD and Alibaba. These are obviously big Chinese plays, and he really bets strongly on Chinese economy recovering. Now that China opened up again, he sees strong potential. Otherwise he wouldn't have placed such a bet into China, while at the same time quite substantially reducing some of the other companies over here. Once again, never heard of them. Right, I pulled it up over here, Curate Retail, and actually funny enough, as soon as I plugged it in, I get a warning. 315 stocks in the consumer discretionary sector are at high risk of performing badly. When I click over here, in the last year it dropped by 61%, over 5 years minus 88%, a huge short interest of 6.79%. That's really quite big. So it really looks to be one of the losing stocks, and maybe he just had enough of the stock and saw it not recovering and just sold his remaining portfolio, because that's a real exodus from the portfolio. And if you saw long-term potential in it, you wouldn't drop it right now at some of the lowest points it has been in the last 10 years, obviously. So maybe he just wants to quit his losers and move on. Obviously, he sees a brighter future in China over there. And lastly, let's look at Bill Ackman, another famous investor and CEO of Pershing Square Capital. His total portfolio value currently is worth 8.78 billion. Obviously, that's of the capital management company, but you can see that's quite a sizable portfolio. So when we click in it, I was really surprised by how few holdings he has. Actually, myself, I probably have more stocks and ETFs in my portfolio than he has. In total, he owns 6 stocks, so that's really not that much. But yeah, really interesting to see. And in terms of activity, he really only bought one, the Howard Hughes Corporation. Once again, I have no idea what they do. If I plug this over here in Seeking Alpha, HHC, I can see over here, what do they do? Let's have a look. Basically, as it says, they own, manage and develop commercial, residential and hospitality operating properties in the United States. They own 15 retail, 33 offices, 12 multifamily. So almost like a REIT in a way, real estate development, obviously. So yeah, that's their real estate play. When I look into the performance over the last 5 years, down 34%. Over the last 10 years, only 5%. So yeah, quite interesting. Also a high short interest. So probably he knows much more than we do. Otherwise, why would he buy so much? So probably he knows something, a new development coming up, etc. Otherwise, it would be a big surprise for me why he would invest so heavily into that group. But yeah, once again, really interesting and opens up our minds to new stocks that otherwise we wouldn't have had on our radars. Now, having looked at some of those investors' portfolios, really interesting article I found over here. What does Warren Buffett's stocks, Bill Ackman's and Michael Burry's portfolio all have in common? And these are the investors we obviously looked at. Basically, the biggest thing is that they don't preach diversification. Actually, they're really not much diversified. As we've seen with Bill Ackman, he only has 6 holdings and others also equally few. For Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway, 60% of his portfolio is in just 3 companies, Apple, Bank of America and Chevron. So 60% of his total portfolio are only in 3 stocks. So normally we always preach about not putting all your eggs in one basket. Well, it seems super investors are not exactly following that rule. And I really love the quote from Buffett over here, where he says, "You know, we think diversification is, as practiced generally, makes very little sense for anyone that knows what they're doing. It's a protection against ignorance." Meaning, if you really know what you're doing and done your homework, you don't need to diversify, you just go all in. So it's a bit of a risky strategy, even though technically he's quite a conservative investor. But yeah, interesting to see once again what they say and what they do. Often 2 different things. So definitely check out the website. I put myself a reminder every quarter to go on there and see what they're doing, just to get a few new ideas of stocks they're buying, stocks they're selling, to see is it something they might potentially see that we don't know yet as investors, or are they buying a new exciting stock that has a big upside potential? Then I would investigate further. The website is free, so why not use the resources? You can really see what they're doing rather than what they're saying, because the news only tells the news they want to tell, and that gets clicks, right? Seeing what is reality and what they're actually doing with their money, that's what really matters. So for me, that's really powerful information, super insightful, and I'm going to use that for myself going forward. Next up, check out the video over here. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and also drop me a comment. I reply to every single comment. As always, guys, stay healthy, get wealthy, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.